In January of 2019, my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor. It was in a completely inoperable part of the brain, and was told me had 6 months to live. He stuck it out and died in October, 3 months longer than he was expected to. He was always positive, and decided a few weeks after his diagnosis that he would write letters for our daughters for significant events in their lives. My husband was my soulmate, and the past few months have been difficult knowing I've lost him. We have 2 daughters, Mia, who is 21, and Imogen, Imi, who is 19. All 3 of us have become a lot closer since their dad's death, and we've all really struggled. My husband and I were together since we were children. Got married when we were 18, and we were approaching our 20th wedding anniversary when he passed. In February of this year, Mia got married to a boy she's been with for about 6 years. I absolutely love her husband, and he's been incredibly supportive during all of our grief. My husband wrote a letter for Mia to open on her wedding day. It's worth noting that my daughters were unaware of these letters. It was my job to give them to our daughters. Her wedding day comes around and I just can't bring myself to give her the letter. I read it and just wanted to keep it to myself. I had his handwriting and his words, and it felt like he was there, and I couldn't bear the thought of giving that up yet. I was fully intending on giving her all the other letters as the events happened. Last week, Mia and her husband bought their first home together. They'd been living at our home since they got married, and so had a lot of stuff to pack and move to their new house. Mia asked me where her important documents were, passport, birth certificate, etc. So I told her they were in my top drawer of my dresser in my bedroom. The only letter that was in there was the one I was meant to give her on her wedding day. The rest were hidden away. She immediately recognized his handwriting, and of course it was addressed to her, so she read it and broke down. She came and found me and started screaming at me, asking how I could be so selfish. I didn't really know what to say apart from the fact that I wanted to keep it and she could take a picture of it. Both my daughters called me an asshole and are convinced I'm keeping them from a load of their dad's stuff. This happened during this weekend, me being in my early 30s and my GF in her late 20s. I was invited to a wedding ceremony of a colleague and could bring someone with me. I asked my girlfriend that I've been dating for a year if she would like to join me, and she was really happy because she apparently loves weddings. Since we don't live together, I drove to pick her up so we'd have some time to spare before the ceremony. As she comes out, she looks really beautiful and has obviously put in time to fix her hair and makeup. She's also wearing an off-white dress that was rather ornate. As she got in, I told her that she looked stunning, but I asked if she could change to a different colored dress for the ceremony. I'm not one for etiquette by far, but one of the few things I have heard everywhere is that you should not wear a white dress to a wedding unless you're the bride. She became pretty upset and wanted to know what was wrong with her dress. I said that it would be inappropriate to wear a white or off-white dress unless you're the bride, and that it's like wedding law or something. Trying to be light-hearted about it. She rolled her eyes and said that it was an outdated tradition about women and virginity, and that when her friends got married everyone wore white and that it's not a big thing anymore. I told her that I don't know what the dress code is for this ceremony, but since it's not saying all white clothes, I still thought she should change to another color, but white or almost white, because my colleague was getting married and we had no idea how she felt about it. My GF became really upset and told me that I was trying to control what she was wearing and that it was abusive, which honestly made me really upset and hurt. I said something along the lines of, well, you shouldn't go to a wedding with an abuser then, and then I told her to off out of my car. She began to cry and wanted to apologize and give me a hug, but I just told her to get out, which she did. To clarify, we never left the driveway by her home. I did not drop her off in the middle of nowhere or anything like that. I drove off and she called and texted me a bunch. I answered, I don't want to talk right now, and then turned my phone off and attended the ceremony. The bride was the only one that was wearing white, so I feel as if my gut feeling was the right one. When I got home, my phone had blown up by texts from her and her best friend saying that I was being inconsiderate and controlling, and should apologize for my behavior. I've vented to a few friends, most of them agreeing with me, but some have said that it was an asshole thing to tell her that she could not wear her dress, because it had nothing to do with me. I feel as if I was in the right since it was my colleague's wedding and it was better to be safe than sorry. But I'm also not sure if I was being an asshole about the situation. My girlfriend found out about the thread, don't know if she knew my handle, or just found it, and we talked over the phone. She apologized and I apologized, and it was a pretty good talk. She asked if she could come over, and I said no and that it would be best for us to go our separate ways. She got upset and asked why I wouldn't even try to work it out. I basically just said good.
Bye.
And then she said my was small, which actually made me laugh after what had been a pretty mature conversation, and then she hung up. I'm pretty sad about it. She really made me feel happy. I was hurt, but if she did think I was being abusive, it would be the right thing to do. And if she did not think I was being abusive and said it anyways, I would not want to be with her. So anyways, I think things worked out for the best for us both. My husband Nick was married to his first wife Vanessa for 5 years, and they had 2 amazing kids, Luke and Lila. Sadly, Vanessa died in an accident 11 years ago when the kids were very young. I started dating Nick 8 years ago, and we started off very slowly for obvious reasons. Nick has always been a little more distant than anyone I'd ever been with. But he and the kids lost Vanessa so young that I understood it. After 3 years of dating, Nick asked me to marry him and I moved in. I've always had a really great relationship with Luke and Lila, and they were happy for me to marry their dad. I had wanted an actual wedding, nothing big. But Nick really didn't want one, so we got married at the courthouse with just Luke and Lila present. We had a really fast engagement, but it worked for all of us. I have loved being Luke and Lila's stepmom and officially adopted them after I found out I was pregnant with our son, Casey. The kids have been so great with Casey and help out so much. Nick was wonderful during the pregnancy and had always been a really loving dad and husband. But Nick has been pulling away a lot the last few months. He's been even more distant than usual and working late nights and going away with friends almost every weekend. I've tried talking to him, but he's been impatient with both me and the kids. I found out I was pregnant in June and am now 21 weeks pregnant with a girl. The kids are excited to have a little sister, but Nick just seems so indifferent to everything and everyone. He's been missing soccer games, Lila's birthday, doctor's appointments, etc. Casey is too young to notice, but Luke and Lila are so hurt by their dad's absence. These kids are so good and they lost their mom so young, and I'm infuriated that Nick is ignoring the kids like this. Last week, I finally sat Nick down and told him that he needs to stop disappearing and be more present in our lives. We're going to have another child soon, and before we know it, Luke and Lila will be grown up and going to college. After an hour of arguing, he screamed at me that he wished Vanessa was still alive and that I had switched places with her and died instead. He also threw in some awful comments that I need to stop pretending I'm Luke and Lila's real mom and that I'm only half the mom Vanessa was. The final straw was him saying that he never even wanted any kids with me, but did it so I'd keep busy and leave him alone. I'm so beyond hurt right now. I know I'm just his second choice. But I've always tried to honor Vanessa and tell Luke and Lila how lucky they were to have her as their mom. I love all of our kids more than anything, and I'm just so heartbroken. Nick barely pays attention to Casey now and doesn't even acknowledge the pregnancy. He somewhat apologized this weekend and took all 3 kids to lunch, but he won't even look me in the eye. He seems like he wants to talk, but he doesn't say anything, and I'm too upset to even be near him. I'm not sure where to go from here. Honestly, I can't even be around Nick right now, and if there weren't any kids involved, I'd leave and never look back. I'm not sure if he's cheating or the thought of a 4th child is stressing him out. But I'm devastated and not sure how or why I should save this marriage, besides doing it for the kids. About 5 years ago, my now estranged daughter, Edie, cheated on her boyfriend, Brad, and got together with a guy, Ken. He quickly started isolating her from family and my husband and I from her kids. Brad had moved back to his home state devastated after the breakup. I discussed red flags her. I let her know we are here for her and concerned. Her and Ken suddenly took off and moved to another state. For 5 months, my husband and I worried about her and the kids as we had n//c at all with them. One day CPS showed up at our door with the oldest child. He was obviously injured from abuse that was reported by the school. We had no idea they had moved back to the area. We agreed to take them in. The next 20 months were traumatic, complicated, emotional, and difficult for everyone. Through it we re-established a relationship with the older child's dad, Dan. Daughter failed to comply with her plan and remained with Ken. Dan worked hard to get custody of his child and he gave ED scheduled weekly phone calls. She called oldest child 2x nothing since. We agreed to permanent custody of youngest. In the process, I put aside the hurt ED caused and agreed to scheduled weekly phone calls and supervised visits in person when schedules allowed. Legally, any or no contact is at my sole discretion. Ken was not allowed to interfere / attend. ED quit calling / scheduling visits after 3 mon. I reset the call schedule to 1 mon. No calls. 6 mon later she calls and wanted me to drop everything for a visit the following day. I couldn't because I had to go back to work. Calls stopped again. She left Ken, has a new BF. I know nothing else about her life / whereabouts. She started calling again about a year ago and I let her know that if she was consistent with her monthly scheduled calls, we would move towards weekly calls again. She called 2 months in a row, skipped a couple months then called 2 more months in a row. Last one happened to be night before child's birthday. She asked him what he wanted for his birthday. He said a call from her. The next day, as he blew out candles he said, "My mom is gonna call now." He had the biggest smile on his face. Call never came. He refused my offer to call her. We survived an emotional meltdown. Next month, no call, just a text after with a lame timing excuse as to why and sorry about the birthday call, she didn't feel well. Following month, I get a text that ED feels ill again, won't be calling. I am beyond frustrated at this point. I have looked past her refusal to rebuild a relationship with us, but when it comes to the kids my heart aches for them. Hey race where I might be the I responded, parents do not get sick time. We all had COVID recently, including me, and I still took care of the children. If you do not have any time for him once a month, I don't want my time wasted with your excuses. Of course, calls stopped again.